Trigger warning. This episode may contain content that could be distressing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to New Earth Studios. Love Now by Alex Roseman. We are here in the heart of the wilderness of Dubai. From our beautiful New Earth Cafe, the Conscious Eatery, where we'll be bringing you conscious conversations with our very next guest. Please do your best to click the subscription button so you can see us evolve and grow and ultimately show up in a community near you. Thank you. I thought Adam would be a little bit braver and say something, but never mind. Faras, welcome to the New Earth Studios.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here.
Thank you very much.
How are you feeling?
I feel good, thank you.
Yeah? Okay. You know what's in store for you? Okay, so first off, people might be asking, like, okay, what does Faras do? He's on here. What is he going to teach us about? And the reason I have you on here is because of the experience I've had with regards to this energy healing type of work, which I know you'll jump into, and how you've sort of challenged my perception about the body a little bit. Because I've had this sore arm, and you said it's not actually the muscle, it was something to do with the organ here. And that organ that's needing energy is drawing the energy from the shoulder and it's pulling it in. I kind of had this vision of like a black hole that's sucking in the lights. And so it's not surprising that people have heart issues are sort of moving like this, like somehow their power source is pulling them into themselves, which shifts their physiology. But modern medicine doesn't really understand that. So it's quite interesting to see your perspective of what you can share and maybe just, help open people's minds up about it. But this is your show, let's say. This is like your movie. So I kind of want you to fill into wherever you want to start from. If you want to start from the end and go into the beginning, or the beginning to end, or middle end, or whatever you want to do.
So the most important thing is to understand that we have different parts of our being. And to look at our physical body, there are certain structures which are above that structure. And when we look at, for example, an atom and make it as big as a football, the core of an atom as big as a football, we will see that the next electron is 10 kilometers far. This is what quantum physics could show. So we can see that 99% of the space in the atom is made out of energy. And when we see that our body is made out of trillions of atoms, then we can see that we are made of 99% energy. And there is certain ancient cultures and traditions which could find that there is a certain system in this 99%.
So what's the 1% that's not energy?
That's matter.
That's matter.
That's what the Newtonian physics is relying on.
So that matter is not energy.
That matter is energy. So energy is transferred into matter. So there is like this kind of yin and yang between energy and matter happening, and that what we see is a more dense form of energy, which we can touch. But basically, if we take out the energy out of our system, we can just take our physical body with a tweezer.
We can take our physical body out with a tweezer?
Yes, because we have 99.99999% energy. And this structure is like an electromagnetic subtle energy structure, which, for example, the Chinese medicine, through the meridians, has differentiated and could find that above the physical body, there is some kind of a layer, and this layer is having this kind of geomagnetic forces which running through the pathways of meridians and nurturing our organs and keeping them alive. And that's what is the prana, for example, or the chi. And this is what's also called the animating spirit. And the animating spirit is above the physical body and is animating the physical body. Well, animating means making move. So it's moving our physical body and keeping it alive. So, and we have to measure that part of our spirit to see if that is healthy, if our physical body is healthy, because our biochemical processes and everything was relying to the physical form, which we can see with our eyes, is relating to the animating spirit. And the word animating, again, has another parameter to it, which is the animal. Yeah? And it's belonging to the animal part of our being. And this can, again, be transferred to the brain. So I have found certain structures where you can relate brain, physical body, to spiritual realms and find direct correlation about the brain functions and how certain brain parts are integrated, and about our level of consciousness and level of mind.
When you mentioned the animalistic part, because what you struck me in the last time we had a conversation, as you reminded me of me when you start downloading, you look like a crazy professor, and it's like it just comes out of you, right? But you mentioned about the Egyptians and why they wore animal heads, animalistic, something to do with the. Can you go into that a little bit? Because I was just getting my animal head around that.
Yeah. So the Egyptians were certain. They were certain ancient civilizations, and we are not 100% sure what is happening with their culture, but there is a lot of information there, a lot of, in my opinion, misconception.
Okay.
And what could be shown, like from my point of interpretation, is that they understood that we have different parts of our brain, and the lower part of our brain, which is, you can call it the reptilian or the brainstem, and
the amygdala, the lower
amygdala,
self,
so like that's
the reactive
part.
part,
So that reactive part, reflexive part,
known as the idiot.
exactly. And this part is like, we can see this part as a program. It's implanted within our system. It is not bad, as people say. This part is maintaining all our vital functions, right? So the respiratory tract, how the heart, how the blood circulation is going, how we are breathing, and everything what is correlated to keeping our body in a healthy state. But it gets unhealthy because these vital functions and this inheritance from the animal kingdom comes with certain drives. And these drives are very, very so-called animalistic drives, and like feeding, fighting, fleeing, and reproduction. And these drives are shaping our behavior today as well, because when we are born into this world, we have only the lower mind activated. We have to see it as an activation. And now we try to justify animal behavior. That's why we have the world we have today.
And what's the world we have today?
So, so the animalistic behavior is based on a survival mechanism, because in the pre-modern time, when we were in the wilderness and had to look out that wild animals don't attack us, or we had to just find food, and it was very hard to find food. And then we had to go out in a safe. We were looking out for safety. So what is happening is that our brain was always looking out for danger, and therefore certain brain mechanisms were implanted in our system to keep that mechanism active, like the amygdala, the reactive force, and how it conveys the information to then the lower part, the brain stems, and we start then moving. And this is all unconscious. For example, the globus pallidus is a part in the brain stem. It's for our body language when I start moving around. So that's why, for example, when someone is angry, he just does certain movements with his gesture and so on, because these are automatic. And most of the people, they are in this lower frame of mind, and then they start justifying their animalistic behavior. So so we have to learn to transcend that animalistic behavior by activating higher parts of our brain, especially the prefrontal cortex.
I was going to say, because the prefrontal cortex is a part of the human that's evolved only in the most recent part of the brain, right? Because the amygdala, the survival aspect, like you said, and many people who kind of get into this work understand that that is what governs us most of the time. And that's why you see the world, when you say that's why the world is the way it is, which I want to kind of explore in how you see the world as it is, and the prefrontal cortex, how that relates now, because this is why I describe the old Earth, and here we are in the new Earth. Because it's quite muddled, The idea is to discern, that clear cut. And the new Earth is to step in that next dimension, that we can evolve beyond the amygdala, the survival aspect of the brain. And then, because most people find purpose in surviving. Because, that's a purpose. If I'm surviving, then I have a reason why I'm here. But for those who suddenly become successful, who no need to survive, they suddenly are met with this void that is far bigger than anything they could have comprehended, and they feel this lack of fulfillment. And that is when they go beyond the survival and they're in their prefrontal. But then it activates something else. As they try to fill it up with materialistic things, they realize that none of that actually fills anything up within. The survival thinks you need everything that the earth offers, but once you have it all, then we activate this prefrontal cortex, it seems like, where we start to ask the questions and we start to philosophize and go into that realm. So anyway, I'll leave you to carry on.
So I would like to summarize again. So we have the lower part of the brain, which is driven from a natural drive, is a selfish personal survival drive. Yeah. So this drive, when it's leading our lives, we can see it in certain aspects. So we can see it in relationships, the narcissistic behavior. We can see it in population, how people are only striving to do everything for themselves, maybe for their family, but just is very selfish. And it's not like people are selfish, the part of the brain is selfish, yeah? And they identify with the part of the brain, so it's all part of the identification. And when we transcend that lower part and start integrating the prefrontal cortex, we're going to the higher mind. So what is the difference? The lower mind has a certain structure of functioning. It keeps us trapped in a very, very low and negative mindset. So the reoccurring thoughts is a downward spiral. It's always and always negative thoughts coming. And now we have to pick those thoughts and block them up. And that's what the modern, let's say, alternative medicine methods usually do. They try to pick up on that lower spiral path and cut them out. But it's like we're staying trapped, but try to just pick up with force. That's what Dr. Hawkins was speaking about, always force versus power, because the lower dimension only works with force. If we don't go out and transcend that, then we are stuck and trapped in the lower mind. So we will always be busy. So what happens now is that when we it's always active. It's when we integrate properly the prefrontal cortex, we will see that the lower parts, the lower brains, which are more primitive and functioning, they do their work only in the vital functions and don't interfere in the behavior form in our life. So they keep the body healthy, but they don't interfere in our behavior. So now the prefrontal cortex activates a different form of thinking. It's called circumspect thinking. Yeah.
What's it called?
Circumspect thinking.
Circumspect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can look now around and see abstract things like the traditional Chinese medicine, how they found the meridians. If you look at the old traditions and religions, yeah, how they found this abstract information. It's not coming from the lower mind. That's why.
Well, they say actually animals are not able to see abstract things. Exactly. Only humans are able to see the abstract.
Exactly.
Sure.
So the IQ of a human being is in the lower mind.
Yeah.
That's why emotional intelligence is there to bring you in the higher mind, because the prefrontal cortex is regulating. And there is a lot of stories about people who didn't lose their IQ when they had damage in the prefrontal cortex, but what they did is they indulged in animalistic behavior. They were more driven to eat food. They were more driven into certain reproductional drives and so on. And they got stuck, and then it got worse and worse, more narcissistic, more selfish, and everything evolved in the more animalistic drive. So now when we are activating the prefrontal cortex, this is called spiritually awakened. And when we are stuck in the lower mind, this is spiritually asleep. And what is very interesting to mention here is that Sigmund Freud, who is a psychologist, and his nephew Edward Bernays, who made Sigmund Freud famous, he found that people are driven by irrational forces, the emotions, the emotional driven forces.
Energy, emotion,
and who drive us to certain desires towards a goal. That's how he found that you can tap into those fears and into those desires and just lead people in certain directions. So I don't know if many people hear about him, but he's quite famous. And he is the founder of modern propaganda and public relations. And he used, till today, the consumerism is coming from Edward Bernays, because all the marketing strategies, if you just look at them, they say emotion sells. So if we are emotional beings, we are trapped in the lower mind. And who is also very, very important to mention is the old traditions, because they say emotions are part of sickness. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if you look at, for example, organs like anger, for example, is related to the liver. Yeah. So for example, and there's certain organs which relate to emotions, which means being emotional is part of being sick, and that's very hard to say like that.
Well, as you said about the state of the world, right?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see where you were going with that. So I'm glad you went that direction, because it seems like linking it to Sigmund Freud's nephew led the consumerism, American imperialization, let's say, because they really ramped it up in America, and that sort of Western thinking spread like a virus. it has its positives and negatives, of course. So with that in mind, understanding emotion, and people are basically like these ions, like we're like batteries, right? It's energy. We have energy within us. So 99% energy. So if you understand that we are energy, and everybody's emotional without this propaganda anyway, but you can direct people. It's like, it's like if you come down on a parachute. I don't know if you've ever done it before. You pull the things, you go one way, or you pull the other things, you go other way. Positive, negative. Yes. It's as simple as that. In the line is love, right in the middle. There is no more positive and there is no more negative. You just see things for as they are. The universe is always giving, balanced. But if people can shift your perception a little bit and your charge, then you can be guided literally like a parachute to wherever the target is that they want to take you. So I absolutely resonate with that. And that's where the state of the world is, because it's not so much... it's more about corporations that sort of behind the scenes. Corporations are governing what's happening. And they're the ones who are the true leaders behind presidents and things like this. And that's kind of the new hidden arm, because they're protected by laws. Because it's not a person, it's like an organization. They get to hide behind a suit, So it's interesting that you share that, because this is ultimately where we're going with the New Earth, is how do we become as transparent as we can be as a company to lead the way, let's say, and not hide behind anything, and not charge people up unnecessarily to lead them in a direction they don't particularly want to go. Anyway, I'll leave it to you.
So what is important to mention here now is that we have these certain layers of our being.
Yeah.
So we have the physical body above, as we discussed, the animal spirit, animating spirit. Then we have the lower mind, Then we have the higher mind, and then we have the divine spirit.
Yeah.
And when we step into the prefrontal cortex, now we are independent from these urges, right? So now we are between God and animal. Now we have the free will activated. Now we can choose, do we follow the animal or do we follow the divine self? The divine self is the enlightened stage, where our self is the true self. The middle part is the human self, and the lower part is the animal self. And when we understand this kind of information, we can step by step separate ourselves from that what we are not, our non-self part. Our non-self parts are what? Physical body, animating spirit, which is our emotions and desires and so on. Then we go above to our thoughts. We are not our thoughts. We can observe them. And the higher you go, the more we understand that we are just pure consciousness. And this consciousness has the power to will. Is the will now sold to the animal, or is our will God's will? And we have only these two choices in life. If we follow the animal will, then our body starts to get sick in stressful situations. If we follow God's will, we start seeing unity. And what is very interesting here is that I say always this is the law of peace. Why? Because we have a law, for example, like in the physical realm, the law of gravity. With 9.81 Newton, something is pulled down to Earth. So now we have predictable measurements. If someone jumps for 1 meter, maybe everything is okay, 2 meter, fine, 3 meter, and so on. Then one time you can say, okay, there is coma stage, then someone dies. So you can predict certain outcomes. The same thing is to the law of peace. If someone is not following the will of God, the will of the divine self to serve humanity in unity, we will start to get in stressful situations because we're living out of the survival drive and give our responsibility to an animal. And therefore our body starts to get stick to a dysfunctional survival drive, because stress doesn't exist as we know it exists. It's like a dysfunctional survival drive because we react to things in life we react to it as if a tiger is attacking us, life-threatening situation, but we react, for example, if our child is just not behaving as we want. And then we activate the same mechanisms as we would run away from a tiger. And we will look at these reactions as absolutely insane. Our brain structure starts to deteriorate. And what is very interesting, that the more we indulge in these stressful reactions, the amygdala starts to grow. They could show that in MRI, and the prefrontal cortex starts to shrink.
Mm-hmm.
And the other way around, when you start doing mindfulness exercises, the prefrontal cortex starts to grow,
exactly,
and the amygdala starts to shrink. So it's already natural. It's as if nature is punishing us when we are not following the divine.
On that note, let's have a pure black shot.
Thank you very much.
It's starting to separate, but I love that. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Very nice.
Now we'll get you going. I'm thinking health, I'm hearing it. And here we are. Because I know I've been run by my amygdala. I call it the idiot self. But the more I go into this journey, looking within and having people like yourself come on here, and I'm really enjoying where we're going with this. And I know we're just starting, scratch the surface. The parts, we talk about the brain and the different parts. I'm learning something at the moment called IFS, which is the internal family system. It's a new term of therapy, where they look at the parts, sort of like the Matrix, where they have the exiled parts, you have the protectors, and they come in to protect you from the exiled parts that we have left hidden since our childhood. Times where we've been traumatized or abused, and that little child of us that we felt shame and guilt is locked away somewhere within our body, you could even say, which kind of probably ties in why certain organs start to shut down, because maybe there's a trauma linked to an aspect of a splintered part of ourselves that is stuck in a certain part of the body, what you deal with. So learning about that when we're triggered under stress, something else steps in. Before I just thought, well, it's amygdala, one type. But actually there's different aspects of ourselves that show up in different moments of stress, and we digress. And then suddenly we don't belong to ourselves. That person is not talking to you, Faras. They could be talking to that part of you that was 6 years old. And that protector is now stepping in to protect that 6-year-old version of you, thinks you're 6 years old, but you're not, It's like it's protecting me. I behave like a man-child, when really that's not who I am. But that part of me thinks I am, and it's taken over completely. Now I'm a lot better than I was. I was like a complete animal back then, completely led by that. I was unconscious and just, having the best time, really, being completely unconscious, not taking responsibility. However, you're able to discern a lot more when you are responsible and you have your moments where you trigger, because it's like new earth, old earth, like this. You go, whoa, how did I get there again? It's like an emotional intoxication. You can kind of get drunk on these emotions, right?
Yes.
So for anybody who's like, okay, what does that relate to somebody who's, activated by the amygdala, they're taken over? What do you suggest as a way to bring themselves back into their higher self?
So first and foremost is the most important thing to focus on integrating the prefrontal cortex, because if we don't integrate it, every therapy will be just a symptom treatment. Because we are trapped in the lower mind, we don't come in the higher mind, so we are still in this negative spiral, and we will go down and we get up shortly, then we go down again and up, down. So we need to have the main objective to integrate that part. And then while we are integrating it, now all the health treatments comes in, depending on what we do. In my opinion, kinesiology is the most accurate measurement on this planet, because kinesiology takes the guesswork out of a treatment. So usually if you go, for example, to a therapist, he or she sees certain symptoms, but these symptoms lead to a certain assumption that this might be that kind of problem and so on. But you never know if it's 100% correct. Even if the therapist is the best therapist in the world, they might have a 99.9% chance, but still there is a 0.01% that's wrong, because it's to a certain level a guesswork. We're taking that out when we use kinesiology, because kinesiology uses the muscles of the body to have a microscopic view into the subtle energy of the system.
Absolutely. When you were testing me, which was quite trippy, I have to say, when you tested my arm and you went, I think you need to have like the colloidal silver, for example. So you pulled out the colloidal silver, you did something to my leg at that time, pushed it down quite easily, and then you had me hold the colloidal silver, and then suddenly my leg was harder to push down. Explain how that occurs, how I can hold this element and it can help my body become stronger just by holding it in a bottle. Please.
So as we mentioned, we are 99.99% energy. So these energy pathways, which are running through our system, go through. They are called meridians. Yeah.
Yeah.
And every organ has its own meridian pathway. Yeah. Actually, the meridian pathways mean much more than just connection to organs, but they are connected also to organs. So we just take the part to measure the organ's health in that moment of time. So then we realize when the muscle is connected, for example, deltoideus, the shoulder muscle is connected to the lung. So when we see that this muscle is weak, then usually we can say it's the lung, but we have still to differentiate between lung and shoulder. That's why we work with homeopathic remedies, which are from the cow. So we have the organs from the cow, which we give the person. The person has to hold them in their hands, and then we can see if it's the organ, because the organs of a cow and this homeopathic remedy are very similar to the energy of a human being, and as we say, the animalistic part, right? So then, if the person holds this homeopathic remedy and it's strong, it means that the organ has an issue. If not, then we know it's the muscle. Yeah. And when we do this kind of test, the reason why it works is because Dr. Goodhart, he was the guy who is the founder of applied kinesiology. He could find directly the relationships between the subtle energy pathways and certain muscles. And now, when a muscle is weak, and I give you, for example, a certain remedy in your hand, for a short period of time, you will have a peak of strength when your neurological structure is responding as strong, which means it's supporting your system. And if it's not strong, it means it's not supporting. And sometimes we have to also test if something isn't taking energy from your system. That's why it's very important to not just take random supplements or eat or go on random diets, because we had some patients, they say, okay, that is healthy, for example, or unhealthy. But healthy and unhealthy is just depends on the person, right? So how the energetic structure, how the 4 elements are structured, or 5 elements are structured within a human being, and now we measure it and we see, okay, sometimes a broccoli can be bad for a person. We never know. It's about the energetic structure.
I agree, but I think there's a universal truth, and maybe I'm wrong, like something like sugar.
Yeah.
Is kind of universally
Yes.
takes away, right?
Yes.
And, you know, say fried food, generally speaking, is probably not great for the body.
Exactly.
But shifting in the conception about what is healthy, like broccoli, like you said, maybe not great for somebody else.
Yes.
So can you find it out for somebody who comes to see you?
Yes.
If broccoli is, or
Yes, definitely.
how do you do this?
Very easy. So my teacher, he found also certain energetic pathways which are above the meridian pathways, and we can find them. So every time when someone is losing certain energy in the system, we can measure the electron loss
Yeah.
in certain parts of our body. And when I see that in a certain part there's an electric loss, and when I put the remedy on top of that part, we can see that this is good for the person. And this muscle is strong. But if I take a strong muscle, this is now goes into technicalities of the kinesiology. If a muscle is strong from the beginning and I put it on this energy part and the muscle gets weak, I know that it's taking away energy from the person. It's very on a very small, it's a small amount of energy which is taken away. But if we have a lot of stuff which we are taking to ourselves, which take our energy away, then it accumulates. And the most important thing is our thoughts, because they take the most life force energy away. And that's again because of the hierarchy, right? So we have the physical body, we have the emotions, yeah. Then we have the thoughts. So the thoughts lead to certain emotion, which then affects the physical body. So we have to understand that we have to shift from the lower to the higher mind, otherwise we will suffer from physical problems. That's why there's a hierarchy. We cannot separate spirituality from health. And health is a pre-acquisition to uplift our spirit, mind, and body to a higher consciousness level.
I love that. Absolutely agree. So people obviously are all thinking. We can't stop thinking, you know, and as much as people try to escape from thinking, what is it we're actually thinking about? And it's exploring, like for the moment, IFS, exploring the parts. Because if you've ever been in a situation where you might have been triggered, there's a conflict going on within us, right? Like I had something literally this morning, carried on over from last night, which I wrote about it in the book because it's so pathetic. And I realized that, that's something that was passed on to me by my own father. That word, that how pathetic is a strategy to get compassion from someone. Because if you're put in a weak position, then people don't think to take from you. So then you're kind of saying, leave me alone. So there was something that showed up for me about these caps, actually, about somebody wanted a cap, and it was ridiculous. But I felt this part come up in me that stepped in and was like, no, and the reason is I'm doing podcasts, and I've only got a certain amount of caps, and there's, scarcity. And my wife, who's like giving, Julia, right? Like just, challenges me on it. And I'm like I'm like conflicted. The stress of like, no, there's only so much. And there's another part of me going, well, how can you not give it? Like, come on, give it. And there's this like battle going on within me about giving up a bloody cap, which I've let go of things are far bigger than a blooming cap. But in that moment, it was like, it's funny how we can get attached to things, material things that seem so irrelevant. But when we put meaning on it, such meaning, like Castaway, with Tom Hanks. Have you seen it? With the ball, the beach ball, whatever the volleyball is, and it's called Wilson. And he builds such a relationship up with this ball. By the end of the movie, when it's floating away in the sea, he's shouting out Wilson, and people are watching it crying because of his attachment to this, that the meaning he gave it. He was like a human being. Yes. Whatever he was projecting onto it was a part of himself that was going away from him as he then went to, as he got rescued. So I can see how people can make these things mean something. Like these are like my babies because it represents. Yes. But I had to go through this journey and understanding what is it that I'm, the guilt and shame that was coming up with me to defend this. Like, no, I should have this, was coming up. And I was wary that, yes, of course, there's a part of me when I was a child that something happened and it was taken. Yes. And the protector came in to stop the guilt and shame part of me, judge me, make me feel worthless in some way. So there was all these sort of parts that are kind of communicating within each other. And usually I'll be confused by it. But when you start to ask these parts, okay, what's going on? Like you're going to your kids and they're having an argument, you go, okay, guys, what's going on? The same thing applies within ourselves, that the thinking part is just an aspect of energy that's trapped in time, that's waiting to be heard, to then be, once it's listened to, it can then transcend itself because it's not stuck in time. It's not misunderstood. It's not feeling judged, Then it feels delight. You can feel love, you feel compassion for it, and then it can transcend itself and no longer plays out. So I wrote all this down with my humorous way because it's so ridiculous. And I got into a space where I let go of the attachment to the caps. And I said, now you can take them. Of course, it's a cap, There's plenty more out there. You cannot outgive the universe. So I'm just sort of sharing in a real-time situation. There was stress, but I had my form as well. My writing, my art. Yeah. My wife is painting. So I think it's so important to have a creative hobby or something where you get to express, or therapy or whatever it is, to help transcend the mix of emotions. Because some of it, like the pathetic thing I said, is my father's, that was passed down from wherever he got it from. So some of the stuff is maybe our own, but some of it can be passed down in a cellular level from our previous parents, right? But then we've got to deal with 4 billion years of evolution, like you said, the survival part that's instinctively in us, that we all share. We all share this challenge.
That's why it is very important to activate the prefrontal cortex. And when I looked at certain scientific research and how the brain evolved and how the brain is activated and integrated in certain areas less or more, I could see that in certain post-traumatic stress disorders, So there's a lot of people with post-traumatic stress disorders. When they start integrating that part, even that post-traumatic stress disorder starts nullifying in effect, which means that when we integrate that part, then all the traumas which we have will not have any effect on us anymore. And sometimes on that way up as a main objective, because this brain part is for higher cognition and aspires much higher things, we have something which pulls us down. This can be maybe 2 or 3 traumas, but it's never more. It's never more. These traumas are very strong, and these have to be treated, otherwise it pulls us down, yeah. And that's our challenges in life, right? So they reflect not only inside of us, they challenge outside of us, because these challenges then, if you prove that you can maintain the law of peace, stay in peace, then you are raising the ladder of, you are going higher in the ladder of consciousness.
That's what I noticed. Even overcoming that, that's, you know, my higher self was like, come on, kids,
Yes.
take you by the hands. Let's do
Exactly what you
the
did.
honorable thing. Here, would you like the cap? And there's parts of me kind of like, oh, I don't want to do this, you know? But then once you kind of align that, there's a sense of ownership of yourself. In fact, the state is far more important than any materialistic things. In fact, if somebody wants my jumper and I can be in a place, sure, that it doesn't alter my state, that is far more important than anything, money, objects. If my state is state of love,
Yes.
that I need nothing
Yeah.
from this world, nothing, and I can even not eat if I didn't need to,
Yeah.
then that's it, right? That's the ultimate.
Exactly.
That's once we're there, there's nothing the world can give us that we can't give ourselves. And it's getting to that place of transcendence, self-actualization. So when you say about activating the prefrontal cortex, how would you go about doing that? It's not as simple as pushing a
It's not- no,
button
it's not very
on the car. That would be nice, though, wouldn't it?
So there is a lot of methods which have to be used, because we have to analyze also the organic structures, certain traumas which are pushing us down, right? So, but just certain structures while we are going up, because when we are deciding to go up in the ladder of consciousness, then the animal starts fighting us. Yeah, it starts. Coming
does,
back with
resisting that.
Resisting,
Yeah.
exactly. So these kind of triggers are part of the process, and that's what we have to understand. We have to cut these off or overpower them. But in the activation methods, there are certain things combined, because the prefrontal cortex is for decision making. Yeah, so decision making from ourselves, not
The higher self.
from the higher
Yeah.
self. Then we have certain planning. Yeah. Then we have also abstract thinking and connecting to the source, and that's what is scientifically cannot be 100% proven, because it's very, very abstract. So because if you look at the 3D world, like I call it 3D because it seems you can touch it like a 3D movie, but you cannot. And the things, the materialistic things, and it's like the carrot with the stick, right? So you're running behind happiness and will never get it, because the neurological structures don't allow it. We have the dopaminergic system, yeah, the reward punishment system in the lower realm. Yeah, it only works with certain habits, which keeps us in a loop of punishment and reward. And if we get something, we feel in a short period of time joy, and then we go down to our lower state. So we have to first of all analyze these habit loops, which are, because even in scientific research, it could show that the neurological structures are really like programs. You cannot just say tomorrow I stop that, or tomorrow. It sometimes work. For example, there are people who stop cigarettes and so on, but in general, the habit loops, they are really deep programs. They have to be observed, and you have to tackle them before they even can appear. For example, if we are smoking, we have to put a cigarette. We have to hide these cigarettes, because it's like a computer.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the first step, and then we have to observe how does it feel. And then when we have that feeling, then we have to understand we are not that feeling, and we have to remind ourselves we are not that feeling. And the more we do certain meditative exercises and certain mindfulness exercises, and we remind ourselves and recognize. Yeah, recognition is one of the most important. They could show just recognition starts activating the prefrontal cortex. The moment where you want to eat a cake, yeah, and you look at it and you say no, it's activating the prefrontal cortex. Yeah. So when you are doing exactly the opposite as the animal wants, you're activating the prefrontal cortex, yeah? So there are certain methods which you can combine together with health treatments to go high in dimensions, but the most important thing is to understand that the days change from, it's very materialistic, yeah? It's very, very materialistic now. So it's easy to attach to ego extensions, right? So we have the ego, and then we have the ego extensions, like the material things. And now we not only identify with our ego, we identify with our cars, with our money, and so on. So when we lose it, it's like we lost ourselves.
Well, ask anybody who's ever lost their phone.
Yeah.
Right? My goodness, the roller coaster loops we do in our head when we've lost something like this, and anybody can test to. If you can manage that, then fantastic. Well, we kind of found a bit of a loophole with regards to desserts. Because here at the cafe, we like to have our desserts, no sugar, gluten-free, that you can
Very
still
nice.
eat it. So, if I'm eating my cake here and make a decision, does that grow my prefrontal?
Yes, definitely.
Because it's a conscious move towards that what aligns to my highest values, right? Because if anytime we make a decision that goes against our highest value and we're going from our animalistic, we're actually putting energy. Have you heard about the wolves? You got your evil wolf and your good wolf, and it depends
yeah,
whichever
I
one
heard
you feed will win.
Exactly.
So we have that animalistic and we have the higher self, and it's a matter of willpower.
Exactly.
So, like, just to explore that, any moment I feel inspired, like people may be watching this and feeling inspired, like, okay, I'd say, when we're inspired, you are where you are now, if we look at time, and then there's a window of opportunity just opens up. Imagine like this fabric of time, this window, and you see yourself on the other side, and you're like, I want to be that guy. When we're inspired, we are that guy because suddenly we're in our higher self, we feel inspired. And it means, like, how I've quantum leaped to where I am today is by jumping through that window. And by jumping through that window, I take action in that moment where I feel inspired to quickly reinforce a habit before that window closes.
Yeah.
And then I forget. So then I'm automatically like order that book, set up in the calendar quickly, or, put it in, I'm going to do that. And then I reinforce it, and then it becomes my habit. And then my habit is about creating habits to reinstill the higher self. So I'm working constantly from my executive function. Do you have any other strategies that may help anybody listening? So what do you do?
So I am doing. There is a very deep structure in the spiritual realm. Yeah. So we have different layers of realms. I don't dive too much deep into these realms. Realms. Yeah. Because there is a lot of misconception about psychics and about spirituality and should I dive deeper?
This is the Dive Deep Show. This is what we're going to call it now, the podcast.
Okay, so
maybe. Should I let you hear that?
Very important is to understand that the lower parts of our being, are connected to psychic powers. It's from the lower realm. It's come from the animating spirit. And the psychic powers, we are all born with it. Some people more, some people less. These psychic powers are unenlightened powers in our beginning of our lifetime. Yeah, so they attract mundane goals. They attract certain things in our life, and that's how you send. And that's why certain religions say evil eye or black magic. You send it out, certain emotional drives. And in the beginning, they are not under control because we are in the lower mind. So now, when we are starting to use them and start to training them, we're still working out of lower mind. It will not only harm us, but also other people. That's why we again have to activate the prefrontal cortex to use these psychic powers in a very favorable manner. That's why, in my opinion, is not allowed and should not be allowed to use psychic powers in the lower mindset.
So don't use this in the low mindset.
Don't use it because it can backfire.
Okay, tell me, how can it backfire?
The psychic powers, so first of all, the psychic powers are certain powers which are there to manifest things in life, which to attract things, how we communicate with our body and the environment, and how sometimes people have the clairvoyance ability, clairaudience, and so on. So now, someone who has a very huge clairvoyant ability, imagine now he's in the lower mind or she's in the lower mind, she will only see negative things and will only, because she's in this negative lower mind, she will always attract these things as well. So she cannot go beyond that. And that's why when we go up the spiritual ladder, we change the thoughts, because now the thought loops are more positive than negative. That's how it starts with the prefrontal cortex and upwards. And that's where we start seeing the truth, because now we have connection to our destiny and our omnipotence. The omnipotence is the spiritual power of God. And we can get a glimpse of that spiritual power. So we have to align that glimpse of spiritual power with our imagination, our psychic power, that we follow truth. So when we follow our own goals and it is not aligned with the goals of our divine self, we are following the goals from the ego and from the animal. So we have to firstly connect ourselves to our divine self and then manifest our goals. And that's why all these movements are now there and with the law of attraction and so on. That's why everybody is suffering still and never finds their own goals, because they are not manifesting the goals from the divine self. They are manifesting the goals from the animal. And that's a very tricky part because it's very easy to sell programs to show people, look, law of attraction is so easy. We can attract everything what we want in life. And but it's hard to say, look, you have to go up the spiritual ladder. You have to firstly go into certain, yeah, you stop food for a certain while. You stop the reproduction drive because you want to raise your spirituality. And then you start maybe manifesting. Nobody wants to hear that. So our destiny is our true selves information which we have to share with people, which is part of the collective consciousness. And this information is unique to every person, and every person has the task to serve humanity in a certain way and to be one with it. The main objective is to be one with the true self. And we have to learn to go up that ladder. And how I do it in the Sufi direction. Like I do the chanting methods in the Sufi direction. Yeah, so should I dive deeper into that?
Go, shoot. I mean, what does that look like? How does it sound?
Because yeah, it's people think it's just following a certain religion or being limited in a certain direction, but chantings, yeah, certain words. These are called words of power. They are not affirmations. Yeah, these words of power are
Incantations.
yeah. So these words of power, like these mantras, modulate certain energies, and they are in direct communication with our energy centers. Yeah, and we have not only seven. That's so the psychic powers again. 5 of the lower chakras are psychic powers. So now when people go to meditation exercise at yoga and so on, they activate the 5 lower chakras. They just activate the psychic powers, and this has nothing to do with spirituality. And spirituality is when we chant our way up, where we understand that, for example, we are one with the source. So we chant that. There are certain phrases which can be chanted, and these can be also measured for a human being. So, for example, we are working with the 99 names of Allah, and certain other wordings and phrases which are given from a spiritual teacher. So I have for myself 3 spiritual teachers. That's why I think it's very important to have a spiritual teacher, because otherwise we don't know what information we are taking in, right? So we are just reading books, hearing something from someone, and this is just segregated information, which is just we just store it as truth, but we don't even know if it's the truth.
I think how I've noticed for myself, when I hear something, I usually act on it
Yeah.
quite fast, sometimes quite stupidly. And with that, it's like an experiment of going, well, that kind of feels like it may have been true, but going along with it, from the feedback I've got from the outside world, not so much. You know, because we're all trying to find out our way, we're bumping into things and, you know, being led towards where we're going. Because that's what it is. We're all learning from each other's experiences. And some people are able to elocute it in such a way that it sounds like from a place that it's not here, you know?
So when I was in a challengeful situations in my life, sometimes they were very long, and these informations came to me, these kind of structures and revelations for how the human body is composed, and the being, and how everything is correlated to each other. And then I started double checking always with certain traditions, so especially with the teacher which I have, and so I could double check if everything is in line. And when I started to using these kind of patterns on people, their healing ability was much stronger. And we have my last patient was a person who had asthma since he's 5 years old, and he's now 45 and was using the inhaler for many times a day, like every 3 hours, couldn't sleep, and we just did a 4 to 6 weeks program with these chantings and my protocol, and now he didn't use the inhaler for 10 days.
Very
the
cool.
10th or 11th day.
Okay.
He didn't use that inhaler anymore, and that's a big improvement. That I choose my the truth by experience, if this is working on long term, and also I double check with my inner self, because if we are using certain things which are not in line, it will take in from our inside world, which means we will not feel happy, or we will not feel we will not find long-term content when we do certain. So there's certain measurements, but I always advise people to listen to certain spiritual teachers Some are lucky to find those. Some are maybe, yeah, very rarely someone finds their own way, because it's very hard in the times of challenges, especially in our world, to stay in line and decide 100% the right way, because we are often in crossroad situations. Yeah, sometimes we have to decide the right, and then we choose the wrong, and there are where the guides can give us certain advice and so on. Yeah, that's what I think. Why I think it's very important to have also certain spiritual guides.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, we've seen what's happened in places like America. We've had one guide who then took everybody on a suicide trip, you know, all drinking from the Kool-Aid. So, but then again, is that bad? Who are we? What is morality? You know, who says death is bad? You know, for some people who are not enjoying life, death seems pretty cool to them, right? So it's that morality of, you know, what is good, what is bad. And I feel the more I'm learning about universal law and talking to people like yourself and understanding that events that happen are just things that are happening. They just are, you know, from whatever it might be, from war to somebody beeping at you, or, you know, whatever the thing is, even disease. Is that bad? Is that good? It's just something that's happening. And how we perceive it is due to us. Like we mentioned before, the state. Do I let anything outside of me change my state? If I'm in a state of love and gratitude, then there is no such thing as bad or good, because I don't see duality anymore. I just see things complete, whole, you know, simultaneously synthesized and synchronized, you know, just is. So nothing's going to knock me off it, no matter whatever happens in front of me, because energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It just changes form. But it's hard to see that when I'm attached to a cap, you know, sometimes, and we remind ourselves that we're far bigger than that. So I mentioned that, and just to go into the disease part, because you just said about the asthma, you know, disease, if it can be cured, let's say, by a method, and there's so many different modalities out there that lead people to have this profound healing experience. So what does that mean? Well, disease is when we have a perspective, say, from an event that we're carrying, like the parts that we talked about, that could be stuck in somewhere, that are showing a disease because they're calling for help, calling for attention, to be loved, ultimately. There's a split going on because maybe there's a moment in time at 3 or 4 or 5, we developed something, cancer, asthma, whatever it might be, that is asking for us to look there, to ask questions, to find out, what are you trying to tell me? What do I need to see that I haven't seen? Because if I have a shift of my perception and it's more positive or negative, disease can be seen as a feedback mechanism to bring us back into equilibrium. So your methodology may help that person to go to that place and to realign, to show that whatever that asthma was a strategy, potentially, that they needed to get more attention, let's say, more care, more love, whatever it was. Because people who have cancer, like my father had now, my mum had it when I was a child, when they have it, it can bring people together, right? These diseases can actually get what they want, connection, love, because they weren't able to get it beforehand. So it becomes a strategy. So once we start to learn that, okay, what is it? You know, disease can actually be guiding us to find out the meaning of life. When we start to actually look at it inquisitively, rather than judge and shame it or use it as a strategy to get things, you know, reinstalling the fact that we need that disease because I can't find it within myself. And that, and it alone, can untangle things because, well, as cliche it is, you know, love heals all, right?
Yeah, so love and peace are sitting in the divine self, right? So that's is a state of the divine self. And everybody who's coming home from work is not saying, I need tension. They say, I need peace. They always want to go back to the natural state of a human being, which is the oneness. So when we seek that and realize that oneness is the solution actually for everything, where even the two feminine and masculine energy is balanced, right, in a person, that's where 100% healing starts, which is the enlightenment. So usually we can say, even if it sounds very hard, that enlightenment is the healing itself.
Enlightenment is the healing
Is the
itself.
healing itself. So, but it doesn't happen So when we are very much disconnected, I'm not talking about certain diseases like which are inherited or certain stuff.
Yeah, good idea. I think they just saw us and went, no, maybe not the right time to bring a crying baby into a cafe. Carry on, please.
Yeah. We're not talking about inherited stuff or so on, because sometimes we don't know the answer, to be honest. We can debate about certain diseases and patterns they are inherited from our, but some people have just inherited stuff which can be changed, yes, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about diseases who are chronically, about 95% of the population, and this comes through attachment in the 3D world and through stress. I would say that 95% of the problems come through the attachment in the 3D world and stress. And the more you detach, the more you see that healing happens, because that's exactly the other way, which is bringing us to the peace state. And that's what is actually the way up. So when we start separating, we will see that automatically these life force energies start balancing. And sometimes we need a kick. That's where the therapy comes in.
I think it's quite ironic that when you started talking about peace, all of that happened. The idea of the baby crying, and it was sort of chaotic. And I mentioned this before when we talked about when we seek peace, we attract war. And it's this energy trying to balance us out. Yeah. Because look at what happens when people are going, we want peace, we want peace. John Lennon, things like this. They attract the absolute opposite, where John Lennon was killed. Because this power of wanting peace then attracts war to balance out. And as you bring it back into equilibrium, rather than seeking for peace and look at love, it seems to quiet down. And I've noticed in the podcast that anytime we talk about certain subjects, like the last one was so serious, like I was going through a thing. There was kids for the first time making funny faces and because they were so silly, and I was so serious at that time, that it was balancing us out. And I'm watching universal laws at play. It's insane. In a beautiful, I'm just seeing these things firsthand, and we're capturing it, I feel like, on camera, because that was quite a... He's noticed that. Did you feel that?
Yeah, I feel energies, but now I'm more concentrated on the podcast, so that's why maybe...
Well, if you manage to bypass all of that, then fair play to you. This is bottle that up, because if you can cut out the screaming child and the babies, then fantastic. So yeah, but anyway, I found that rather unique in itself. This because whatever we seek will always attract the opposite, right? To balance us out.
So when we seek, for example, peace, we are seeking it as a certain state, because when we are in the state of oneness, doesn't matter how the circumstances change, we're staying in peace. And that should be usually the absolute aim. Then we are not attached to certain outcomes. And that's why the interpretation also from certain circumstances, again, attached into emotions and feelings, right? So when we are one with our divine self, and which is sometimes we might not even reach it in this life, then, but it should be, we should aspire it. We should.
Why? When I hear the word should, it seems like it's an external force outside of ourselves telling us. So where's the should come from?
Because that's why I was mentioning before that we have these kind of laws like gravity, and if we don't follow them, then it doesn't work. These are not opinions, for example, which I am mentioning. If we don't follow that path, we will see that our body gets into disequilibrium, and if we follow it, we see that everything falls in place. So that's a proof that we have to do that, and that's a law and not the opinion.
Brother, so how did you get into this line of work? What is it that brought you here?
Yeah, so the beginning of life starts always with certain challenges, and it goes forward.
What were your challenges?
Yeah, I had, my challenges were that I was born and raised in a medical environment, so there was always this...
A hospital?
No, my parents and brothers are doctors, so...
Okay.
So it was always this kind of environment where it's just the medical degree and success and so on.
High achievers.
Yeah, but that's, just like paper, and it was very important that time, academic degree, and I studied civil engineering to also make my mother happy. But while I was doing that, I was always somehow interested in energies and so on, but because I had by myself health issues and doctors couldn't solve it. So I
Okay.
tried to searching for it. I started searching. So I had many years of, still now, of course, I get challenges. Everybody gets that. But in that time, it was like a chronic challenge time for, I think, 15 years of my life, only in a spiral down. It was a downward spiral all the time. And I tried thousands of therapies. I was taking 60 supplements. I was following all the strategies for a healthy and lifestyle. I was going to the gym all the, like 2 times, sometimes a day even, and doing everything very disciplined. But I was seeing that inside was going down and down and down and down. That's how I realized there has to be something wrong. It's not the outside world. The more I go into this 3D world, the more I get just attached and attached. So I need the other way, the way up, some disconnection. And this took me a while to discover this until when I came to the point where it was not an up and down anymore, where my down was just maintained. It was a time where I thought like, what is the purpose? Why are we here? It seems that I have everything, but I feel empty. And then everything starts opening up. And that's where, step by step, this kind of equilibrium came in place, where I have some kind of anchoring. The anchoring means like not that I never have a down. It means I can push myself up quite fast. And also when I have a down, it doesn't go down as before. Yeah, so the perception. And then there is some kind of a state which maintains within ourselves. And before, I was always, the way of living was completely different. I was very strict. I had to always have the best look here, and everything has to be perfect, and you know, like everything in line and everything planned, like this this order of having everything organized and perfect, and what people think about me, and you know, like everything aligned. And then I said, when I was in this stage where I was completely down, I said, I have to detach from everything. And that's where things started unfolding. That's where things started opening up. And then even the treatments which I did were more successful. Before, it was very interesting. So I had this osteopathic treatments, and you need to have some kind of anatomical knowledge. So I went in such a deep anatomy that when I didn't treat a certain bone, I felt like guilty that I didn't treat that bone. And I didn't realize that that's against segregative thinking. That's the lower mind. So it doesn't matter what I follow, the lower mind, if this stays, we will never heal.
Because then it becomes a lower mind, then it becomes more subjective.
Exactly.
And, you know, we're doing science and all these people are doing what they're doing, but there's still people looking at these experiments. So they're bringing their subjective reality into it, right? Which is could be seen as worrisome for AI. But, you know, like the universe will always balance out. There's always as much positive than there is negative. So how did you come to a place where you realized that you were becoming more objective into your work? Because you were coming through your own struggles. How did you really pull out of that?
So I started getting this kind of, I asked the spiritual teacher, and then because I was getting this information, if this is aligning with the structure, and yes, it was. And then I started doing every day this chantings and exercises for the mindset, and training my brain. And every time I did it, then certain challenges came up, which this time I stood in peace. I didn't react to them, yeah. And the more I did that, the worse it got in the beginning. But then it starts come down to a state where things were more aligned, and they couldn't bring me out of this equilibrium very fast anymore, yeah. I would not say that I'm close to enlightenment at all. And that's where we realize that when we have just a glimpse of going a bit higher, a glimpse of that dimension will show us, wow, what is possible in life, and that it's much more than the physical material world.
What does enlightenment look like to you?
I don't know, because I didn't experience it.
How would you know if you have?
I think that there are people who experience that, and I believe that the spiritual teacher which I have experienced that, and that's why I believe that.
Okay. Because, you know, when I hear like a belief, like this table, when it usually has 4 legs, if you take one leg out, it falls. So a belief is held on by something that we have not yet experienced, but we think it's outside of us. So there's always that they say about getting to enlightenment. This monk went to see a student went to see a monk. He said, I want to be enlightened. And he went, okay, meditate for 10 years and you get there. I want to get there quickly. Okay, meditate for 20 years. So the more we want it, the more we push it away, more evasive it is from us. So it's looking at it and going, okay, well, what is enlightenment? Who has it? What do I perceive that person has that I don't? And do I see that, am I putting that person on a pedestal? Am I putting myself in the pits because they've reached enlightenment and I haven't? So are they better than me in some way? Because what you're really doing is recognizing that whatever is in them, you have it in yourself. Because there's over 4,500 traits. We have every single one of them within us. But what's also the negative of being enlightened? You know, because everything's balanced out. So once we shift our perception, like of somebody going, I really want to be like them. Okay, what's the downside? Just to balance us out and go, okay, once I brought it back into equilibrium, it's not so far out there and actually it's just here. Suddenly it's not that hard to attain anymore because I haven't made it bigger than me. I haven't made it further away from me. I haven't, you know, because what does that mean, right? Time and, you know, the effort we have to put in to become it. Once we start to kind of see how, you know, is anyone ever truly enlightened and they stay there? Or they have an experience and they just talk about that experience for the rest of their lives? You know what I mean?
Yes, yes, yes.
So the reason I say that, because I was like, I want to reach enlightenment. I was on that path of just want to reach enlightenment. And part of me wants to experience every part of life, you know. But once you experience it, it's like, okay, now I've experienced it. What else is there?
So what I believe, or what I think, and what I experienced so far, showed me that it's achievable for everyone to reach that state. To keep that state is something different, and I think it's a bit. There's a lot of misconception here as well, because if you maintain that state of enlightenment, you're not coming down to earth to fulfill a certain task. So there has to be a certain swing, right? Which means that we have to reach that level and bring it down to earth. Yeah, so we have to, and the most
spiritual material.
Yeah, exactly, and we have to bring it down. That's where we have, when you go, for example, and lie down on a bed where they measure your heart, you see this line of life. Yeah, this is the line of happiness between peace and joy. So peace is where you are the anchoring. When you, for example, don't achieve that what you want, you stay in peace, and when you achieve it, you're short time in joy, and you go back in peace. So you have this kind of, and that's the yin and the yang of what, where people think we have to have an up and down just in negativity, but in that stage, we can have definitely a peace and then be in joy and peace and joy.
Well, I just want to go on that peace and joy thing. Who do you know lives in peace and joy?
I know
Oscillating between peace and joy.
I know a person who lives in peace and joy.
Yeah?
But yeah.
How does that look?
People observe these people and they have the experience with them, and you can also experience it with see, and then you will see that they live on a bit different level of mind. It's a bit different how they think about the world and so on.
How do they think about the world?
You have to ask them.
Do you know someone? Bring them on here. I'd like to see if I can shift their peace and joy equilibrium. Just a little challenge, because there's a certain thing about, you know, seeking something, and ultimately, I think we can all agree that that's what we're searching for. Ultimately, you know, the pleasure without the pain, which is an impossibility because you can't separate the two. But if we're in peace and joy, and we're in that state only, then where's the challenge in order to grow if you're in a state of peace and joy?
But maybe we think that out of our consciousness right now. That's what I think as well. But I think that I still think that people should believe that enlightenment is achievable. That's why you said, like, otherwise you put yourself down to something.
Yeah.
We should think it's achievable, and we should aspire.
Why?
Moral. Because if you look at the prefrontal cortex again, is the opening of enlightenment, because it has the only inhibiting lines for the animal, so we aspire up. And as we have the microcosm and macrocosm, we can see it's only the way up. If we are not going the way up, we will stay the way down. And so what we have to do is we have to enlighten the prefrontal cortex so it regulates the lower part of ourselves, so the 3D world is in moral manner, looks in unity, looks, you know where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
And it might be even higher than the prefrontal cortex. That one I didn't experience, and we cannot show anatomically. So we can not show what is even higher than that. But we know that there is the way up from even anatomical structures. And if we follow this direction, we show our people with our behavior in relationships how to live. We see that our organs start to get healthy. So all pillars in life, relationships start getting better. Our body starts getting healthier. We will see that we're getting happier. Why? What is happiness? Happiness is when the hormones in our body is balanced. We cannot feel happiness when the hormones are not balanced. Serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, and so on, they have to be balanced. And that happens when you awaken the prefrontal cortex, because you're not depleting in the dopamine reward system. And the next one is also like there is all the layers in life will improve. So that's what shows that when we go that path of mindfulness and come down to earth and do our actions, that's how we align with the world and stay in unity. And we can call it peace, or we can call it joy, or we can call it balance, content.
I hear you, and it seems quite pedantic, right? That I'm picking on the words, but what does it say? First there was, how does it go? First there was God, and then there was the Word. First there was the Word, right? There was nothing, and then there was the Word, and then there was life.
So what is the word?
So the word, if we're talking about something where you mentioned happiness, because that's an emotion. And I say it because when you express happiness, we're ultimately suppressing sadness, because it's an emotion. So this is why I say love, because love is able to see both sides simultaneously and just see that love is the word. Love is creation. Love is what heals. Love is the new earth. Love is the prefrontal cortex, because everything else is emotion. But love is a feeling. And when we get to a place of feeling love, then we look through those lenses, and that's all we see. We just, like, anybody who's ever been newly in love, we've met somebody, raining, thundering, it doesn't matter what's going on, we're just like la 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 la, because we feel love, right? And of course, we learned that love is conditional. And then we're taken out of that state. And then suddenly we're in the lower mind, and then we get pulled into this sort of ping pong, ding, 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 you know, this pinball machine of feelings and emotions and all that stuff. So I mentioned, you know, being pedantic about words, because through a mentor of mine who has coached people who have written bestsellers on happiness, have written a book on happiness and been depressed at the end of it. Because they've happy, the crash. Because the homeostasis is saying, well, you've been suppressing sadness for so long, you finished it, now let me come in. And it's this balancing act. So there's a misconception within the self-help industry, this idea of pursuit of happiness, that whatever we're seeking, we're always going to attract the opposite. So what is it all about? Because there's been so much misconception that you've seen. Where is it leading us towards? And you beautifully said it. It's a free prefrontal cortex. How do we get there? You're on your journey too. I'm on my journey too. So here we are kind of figuring it out, both together. And I see me and you. And I've been where you are, and people have asked me the same questions. And I'm like, a bit like, I don't want to be challenged. But I realize challenge breeds growth. Support breeds entropy. So you need that fine balance, exactly, right, to get into this place and understand it. Because I've had guests on here challenge me big time. And I'm like, you know, we feel in that moment villainized, or what's the word I'm looking for, tormented. And it's our tormentors that actually teach us the most, right? I'm not saying I'm tormenting you, of course. I haven't even begun. No, I'm just playing. But you see what I'm saying? That, you know, we are figuring this out. And I notice how calm you actually are. You know, you are settled within yourself already. And
no, I think I'm still quite far, but I aspire it.
Yeah, but what makes you far? Because obviously the only time I see you is when you're pretty calm and collected. When was the last time you were
it happens.
Triggered?
It happens, triggers still, because I mean, as I never experienced the state of being there all the time, I experience still moments of life where I don't have this alignment. But what I realized that it doesn't go deep inside me. And this can be only is in like an objective point of view, right? So when we speak about all these words like peace, love, and so on, it's just also like man-made words, right? So we've tried to maybe I describe with peace what you describe with love. Yeah, maybe we like these are just man-made words. For me, it's just like a state where the ups and downs are not like that's why we have the
Not as
bipolar.
extreme.
That's
Like the
exactly.
heartbeats.
So let's say
Ba-boom,
it's a
ba-boom.
bit like this, yeah, and
Yeah.
you just have it internally, but you don't have to show it externally, right? So you have it internally. It's so small that you might not even feel it, and maybe that's called peace. That's called love. I mean, we are going out to very subtle energies again. So maybe the curves of the resonance, right, up and down, is very, very small amplitudes that you don't even feel it. And maybe that's called peace. Maybe that's called love. So that's where I'm thinking that we can find this kind of equilibrium where catabolic states and anabolic states, right? So when the cells are growing and destroying, yeah, so we have construction and destruction. That is, when that is in balance and homeostasis, we are healthy, yeah. And we can observe, we can say love, we can say peace, both. They put this homeostasis into place, and our body starts healing again. But then we come out of homeostasis. It's fine, we have challenges, but we have to learn to come back. A prolonged stage of staying in challenges, that's then
Stress.
chronic stress.
Yes.
Exactly. So we have to learn to cope with challenges. And what happens in the ladder, that's what I realize, is that you come back to equilibrium quite fast, and you start changing your perception to certain things. And that's step by step. Not everything. It's not like a one-time kick. That's what I feel so far. And yeah, so that's
Okay. I mentioned before about, the trauma and looking at, prophets, and they created scriptures and things like this. And I think due to my own experiences and what I've gone through, and also the ecstatic highs, because now you can have medication that gets you there. You don't need to go to the extreme low to find the extreme high. You can take something like MDMA and go to the extreme high without going to the extreme low. And from that place, I feel, the new earth was formed because of that extreme high, that we brought something from the stratosphere with us, my wife and I, especially when we first met. This new earth, what is it all about, right? And it's like we grabbed a glimpse of the divine, of the spiritual sort of this divinity, and it was here. And then there was me and my back to reality function, far from enlightenment, to then go on a journey to going, well, we brought something down from somewhere. How do we nurture this and grow it? Because when I was building New Earth, and as we still are building New Earth and writing the manual and all this stuff, it's about who I've had to become as a responsibility for this finite, this energy from wherever it came from. Because when I first came, I thought I wasn't going to be able to be within the New Earth. I was going to get kicked out of it because I was still governed by my lower part, my brain. But I realized the capability of the higher part to hold me accountable, because I had a purpose now, that something came from this place. And that's been my journey, my purpose, bringing you on. Why this,
Very
to
nice,
keep my head above water. And not just for the sake of surviving, because I've been doing that my whole life. In fact, this should be my 41st coming up next month, my 42nd in a year and a month, when apparently by numerology is when I'm out of survival. So will be 42 years in a year and a month that I'll be coming out of survival, but I've been in survival. So that means that my lower part, my brain is starting to let go. And I've got, and these things are conspiring to actually kind of fulfill this prophecy, this self-fulfilling prophecy that's sort of unfolding itself. Because without purpose, we go through life bumping around and we get influenced by other people. We're not even sure about who we are. What is the point of what we're doing? It's scary. It's a scary world. I see my father who is, surviving day to day and using whatever strategy he can to kind of get him through, right? Which is most people. what is your purpose? What does it pause you for? Do you feel you got to your place and that's where you're going to now be until you transcend?
For now, I would say I'm in the beginning of my phase of purpose where I am putting together health with spirituality and putting microcosm together with macrocosm. And on this journey, I have gathered many people who support this idea, and we are like getting more and more people in that journey, and a lot of success with people changing their health and maintaining it. That's the most important. And my purpose in the moment, what I think is the purpose also in my life, is to show people how they can survive by themselves to a level that, or not say survive, come to a level that they can heal themselves, that they can nurture themselves without relying all the time on outer therapies and so on, right? So when I treat them, I even tell them, look, I want you to learn these techniques. So I give them a lot of stuff so they learn to maintain that state, that they don't come back again and say, look, I'm feeling this and that. And we have the tools if we use them, if we understand anatomy, physiology. So for example, let's talk about the lymphatic system. Yeah? The lymphatic system, if we know that it just works with muscle pumps, if we don't move, it doesn't detox. You know, like there are certain things which if we understand, and if we just do 10 minutes of lymphatic exercises every day, short walking, 20 minutes, fast walking, not running. Why not running? Because if you look at a sick person, when he runs, he will get more sick. Okay, why? Because the sympathetic system gets activated when we run. And there was again this advertisement for Nike for running, yeah? So when you look at Nike shoes, yeah, they were advertised in the 1960s when someone was running with those shoes, and suddenly it became a trend that it's healthy. But why can it be? How can it be healthy if it's activating the sympathetic system? Yeah, and if you look at a person who is not in a good state and he's running, so he's losing his life force energy, which means there you can measure what is healthy and what is not healthy, right? There are certain things if we learn, and as you mentioned before even, right? So we don't need to measure everything like we talked about the broccoli. There are certain additives, there are certain sugar, there are certain which are unhealthy. If we generally avoid them, then our body can cope with a lot of stuff if we override the stress mechanism, because the stress mechanism is attacking every single organ and putting it out of this equilibrium. So now suddenly the immune system is down, we eat something and we create an allergy towards something normal, which we didn't have before, right? Because our immune system is suppressed and start overeating. So
we open the gateways to all of
if
this mischief.
So I want to teach people to come out of this stress effect. Yeah, I call it dysfunctional survival drive. Yeah, because
dysfunctional
survival drive.
Okay.
Yeah. And this dysfunctional survival drive, because with the prefrontal cortex we can put it in place. That's how it can be shown.
Okay, I love that because a lot of people think running's great. I used to run a lot. I was a cross-country runner. I mean, I realized that that was a time when illness would come in, mouth holes, like just worn down. And now since giving up the gym and running, now it's yoga, swimming,
Both
other
amazing.
wonderful forms of exercise, walking, obviously with your partner, making love and all that sort of stuff. These things are acts of love, which doesn't cause any stress on the body. I'm like, oh my God, what a revelation. Noticing that I was stressing myself out, thinking, well, I've been taught this is healthy, yet my body is saying it's not. It can't be what I thought was healthy because everybody's doing it. So it must be something else within me than this. And I start looking everywhere else but from actually myself and hearing of my own self, knowing that, you know what, we can exercise and not have to have a stressful, unhealthy attachment to exercise, because then it was linked about how I looked, because I was attached to what I was looking like and how I was seen. I let go of that just last year. And then just doing a yoga mat, which we have from our self-love store, bit of a plug in there, you know, vegan and all that jazz. And there's my space. I can do the yoga, lunges, push-ups, whatever the stretches, all of the stuff from one little space. And then a swim, and then a walk, and ease into the day. Rather than, I mean, I used to have the chewy thing just to get the jaw going while I'm working, you know, and all this stuff going, this has got to be good for you, you know? Like, come on. I look at myself now going, what was I on? It's like madness. And people, are doing that, and they think they're coming here for a healthy juice to kind of balance it out. But how do you think we can shift that misconception, apart from education, of
I
course?
wanted to just mention that you mentioned so many misconceptions, and that's exactly what is happening. That's why we are bringing a platform up soon in a few months, an app where we give this kind of piece by piece information about the truth in health, yeah. And then also certain exercises and stuff. Not 100% planned so far, but like organized. But we already started to plan this kind of app to give this truth to people in health, yeah. Health
Okay.
action. Yeah, exactly. So even if what you mentioned, right, like the swimming is very healthy, it's like also pumping the lymphatic exercise, the lymphatic system, then the yoga, right? So it's all about consciousness. It's all about releasing the cortisol from the muscles, because also again people think that we store mentally stress. No, stress is stored in the muscles. Stress is stored in the physical body. That's why you have to treat it somatically, right? So you have to take it out of the system through somatic exercises. So like there is a lot of stuff where people can learn to improve their health with not following marketing, right? Take this stuff and that stuff, and even with certain diets, right? So I usually say, look, if you can eat healthy, but some people cannot afford it. Some people cannot eat all the time healthy, and
Well, you said before, what is healthy?
exactly.
How do they even know what it is to
Exactly.
eat healthy? So I guess it's the empowering people to go, listen to your body. Keep a little diary if you need
Yeah.
to. I had that today.
Yeah.
How do I feel?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
hold yourself accountable.
Absolutely. And if you avoid stress, your body can get rid of these toxins as well. Because I wrote my bachelor thesis in civil engineering about how constructions and so on are harming our system because there are so many chemicals. And I came across the number of chemicals registered. Today, 208 million. So if we want to take care about this is good and this is bad and this is bad, it's just about we have to keep the body working and detoxing. So that's where we need the lymphatic exercises, maybe as sometimes a liver cleanse and so on. But the mind and the thoughts, they are interrupting that equilibrium. And that's why we have to come back to that, and it's a huge numbers going on there. That's why marketing industries, they are just focusing on one thing. And
I'm starting to learn who I am going through my life, and I'm looking at everything with purpose. Before I was exercising for the purpose or intention of looking a certain way. Though I'm married, I'm like, who cares? Not like I want to just give up on myself. But here I am on planet Earth. There is gravity. There are elements here that we need to be aware of that pull down on our body a certain thing. So we need to counter that with certain exercises that are for Earth, planet Earth. If I want to get big in a gym and get huge, is planet Earth the right place to be that? Because gravity is already pulling us down. Do I want to be heavier? My heart's only a certain size. We all share the same size heart mostly. So there's certain things that we do for ourselves, but are they for this form for planet Earth? Does that make sense? So yoga and things like that, about spine health, we are built in a certain way that looking after our spine is fundamental. Not doing, say, power lifts, where my brother, for example, has had to have back surgery. Though he was very strong, could lift 1/4 ton. Okay, now what? You got the rest of your life, and now you have all these injuries and things like this. It's about being mindful of what it is we need to do in order to protect the temple that is housing all of the aspects of ourselves, because the spine is the aerial, the channel that goes straight into, the brain and the top of it and the nervous system.
exactly.
For me, it's like, wow, of course. I mean, I've done gym exercise and I've hurt myself, and I'm thinking, why? What for? Because I need to know how to, for what? Once I started to learn that, and I could take the stress off myself that I was in survival, that I needed to fight for whatever reason, because there was an angry part of me, whatever. But once I can transcend that by taking new actions and start to actually listen to myself, then there's none of that pressure of I think I should do anything. I just took that off of me. I could just be, and it was such a freeing experience that now my life is the way I want it to be, not I have to do something. You know, there's that feeling of have to, or even running or whatever it is. It's like I thought I missed running.
Is
but
it not
yes,
peace now? Then,
I would say it's
like this contentment is.
yeah, it's like, because I know I still have to do it. I wake up in
Yeah.
the morning, every single morning, like brushing my teeth. I still
Yeah.
get up earlier in the day.
But you don't feel you have
But
to,
I-
right? You do it because you want to.
There's
no?
an inspiration at the beginning.
Yeah.
But after the third month, every single day, there are moments where I'm like, okay, get up. Let's, like, because sometimes it's like, do I have to do this for the rest of my life? You know, there's a part like,
Yeah.
that's why I think some people don't even start the gym is guys, if I start, then I have to keep on going, you know? If I just don't start at all, then, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And like you said, what's healthy? Some people going to the gym and running, thinking they're doing something healthy, where actually the person who's not running is actually healthier.
If you look at the martial arts or qigong and so on, right? That's real life force energy, bringing it into equilibrium, right? So if you watch them, what they are doing is not just running around. So this is like moving the life force around, right? To bringing it into alignment with the macrocosm. So they make the microcosm align with the macrocosm and channel the chi into the meridians and keep the organs healthy, the mind, body, and spirit.
I think when you're inspired, that practice, that modality somehow finds its way in, and we go, okay, I'd like to incorporate that, because there are a lot of modalities I do in the mornings. I can't do every single one, otherwise by the time I finish, it would be nighttime, you know? So it's about picking and choosing, and certain times of our life that we suddenly move to a new modality, that whatever inspires us in that moment that we need it. And it's about experimenting and just, there's a buffet of all these different modalities to play with the life force energy. And there's all these different things that we have, thankfully, with the internet and communication podcasts, that people can learn and try something new. I just want to touch on the fact that you got into this field, right? And that civil engineering is, I'm sure, has played its components of your medical understanding. But you've come from a family, they're all doing their serious doctoring, and then you're a bit of a rebel coming in.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, well, here's another aspect. What is it that led you to become the bit of the black sheep, let's say, that you've come out in medicine that is not a field that anybody really knows about, and it's brand new, and it's sort of turning the traditional medical field upside down? What is it that enticed you to challenge that?
So my whole story, when I was having these kind of problems, I was taking antibioticums and I was taking all this stuff, and nothing was helping. And even I got more and more problems, like for example a thyroid issue. I went to the doctor, they just looked with a sonography and watched the structure of the thyroid and said it looks perfect, like in a book. But I had a thyroid issue, so I was realizing that there is not enough. The approach was not holistic enough to understand what is going on in the system. So that's why I said, look, I want to learn this and I want to teach people how they can really, really find truth in health. And that's why I started this journey, and I went to a school where my teacher was an osteopathy and kinesiology teacher with orthomolecular medicine, and that's how he named it, but it was much more. It was a combination of many, many, many things, but there was no name again. It's just names, right? So it's a healing modality, and which was combined and through different approaches. And when I started treating my parents and my brothers, they were my first patients. They were seeing the improvements within their system, and just people were telling each other, and I had step by step more and more patients, and I was realizing there is much more. It's working. And I was in the school for 2 years, but after 6 months I already started treating people, because my mother just got me a patient and she said, just start now, because that's how you learn. And even with the smallest glimpse of trying to do the alternative direction, it helped the person, and that's how I got my experience from the beginning. But it was also
Well, it's all interesting that your parents accepted your way.
Because they saw the
results.
Yeah.
So they were like medical people.
Yes.
And your whole family. And there's a lot of homeopathic medicine within your field,
Yes.
right? which has been discredited.
Exactly.
So there you have the medical people in your family who are now saying, I'm looking at this quite differently now.
Yes.
How has homeopathic medicine's got such a bad rep, and how are you managing to use it?
Yeah.
How can you change somebody's mind that says homeopathic medicine,
Yeah.
waste
So
of time?
that's where I was mentioning kinesiology, because again, if they see the muscle effect before and after,
I've seen it.
yeah,
It's
before
mad.
and after,
Yeah.
and then they see, okay, that's good for me, and because my family trusts me as well, so that's a different level. But there might be a lot of people still they would not believe it for sure. But it's again my family, so I'm close to them, and they saw the improvements, what happened to them through homeopathic remedies, through supplements, through exercises. Still today, my mother's doing everyday lymphatic exercises, calling me, and if they have something to if they want to know more about health, they call me always and ask me what should I do. My brother has some issues with an abscess somewhere, and then I told him take something. He's, oh my God, that's such a wonder remedy, and say no, that's just normal. That's how the body works. And yeah, but we have to also understand that the medical industry is not learning anything about health. That's why it's
Rinse
not,
and
yeah.
repeat.
So that's okay. So they have their own part, yeah. So diagnosis patterns and so on, and certain blood tests. Again, I could talk about blood tests a long time, because there are certain blood tests which are giving you certain indications. Some others they don't have even any meaning, and even the ranges were cut down that they find more sick people to give them remedies, right? So there's a lot again in this misconception, which I will also talk about a lot later on, and yeah. So when they are following this kind of holistic structure, the people are seeing improvements, and I think many people, many therapists, they know that already, and they are applying it. I just have my own approach; they have their approach, and everything works. What is alternative? I think. Yeah.
The shift is happening for sure. I think COVID was a big push for a lot of people. You know, not sure who to trust, misconception about medical system. You know, like you mentioned before, the propaganda by Sigmund Freud's nephew. You know, it's all tied together quite neatly within the old earth. And then us stepping out, having a new perspective, we're able to see it. You know, from more objective reality. Because when you're in it, it's very difficult to see, right? For those who are in 9-to-5 jobs, you know, watching the news, go on the tube. It's a life I was in before. You don't know you're in it unless you step out of it. So this podcast is really all about that. It's, you know, for those who have stepped into the new earth, you know, in your own way, that you know there's something beyond what we can see. And I've read, there's a really cool book that I'm not sure if you've read it yet. You get to check it out, Electromagnetic Fields by Faraday and Maxwell, who didn't create it. It's not like Isaac Newton founded gravity. It's always been there.
Yeah.
It's just they saw these electromagnetic fields and they realized they were there based on some intelligence that came to them. And people thought, what are you talking about? Which makes me think about these energy centers within the body, because who can see it? You know, what proof is there? But there's a knowing that something you went, well, that approach does not help with this issue I have. So there must be something more that goes on beyond modern medicine, because all they're doing is rinse and repeat after 50 years, let's say. Fields of magnetic whatever points in the body. Well, if I can access that and understand it, then we know how to align certain elements, homeopathic medicines, to help treat that body. We can cure the incurable. We can get to a place where we can transcend the medical industry, because that's ultimately what it's about. Once we're out of survival, we want vitality. We want to, once we have our purpose, we want to be here on earth and be healthy and enjoy our life, right? So it's beautiful to see this new way coming about, because I'm not sure if many people know about it. What is it you call it again, your field of expertise?
The kinesiology, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it just
So I call it
kinesiology?
kinesiology,
Yeah.
which is the test, yeah, taking the guesswork out, having the test what is good for the person
Yeah.
or bad for the person, and then the certain therapeutic modalities which I combine depending on what the person needs.
So therapeutic kinesiology.
So the kinesiology is the test,
Yeah.
and then I use osteopathy for the treatment.
Okay.
Osteopathy and test certain herbs.
So what do you
homeopathic
call that? Seems like we need to give it a name.
rem-
Kinesiology. And We think of a name here. Something will come,
Yes.
and we'll bring it up. But it seems like it needs something where people can go, oh, because you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. But it's how do you wrap it all together and then call it
So our new company will be called Horizon.
Horizon?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where things got implemented, but there's a lot of stuff for general things, and the therapies are just a small part
Okay.
of it.
Okay. If your life was a movie, final question of the day, what kind of movie would it be?
Aspire truth,
Okay.
and to seek to find the information which is the truth for my system, to find the way up, like to go up with the prefrontal cortex and higher. That's what I think is my life.
That's a long title of a movie, I have to say. Okay, so kind of genre is like a mockumentary, like a documentary of your life is about finding the journey to the higher function, the
Yes, that's
cortex, prefrontal cortex.
yes.
Phew, say that 3 times. Okay, and one final question because it's short and sweet. What do you feel is in the way for you to attain enlightenment?
What do you exactly mean? There's no way.
Well, enlightenment's here, you're here. What do you think it is that you need to happen? Or what do you think is in the way for you to attain enlightenment?
Before, I was questioning a lot exactly this kind of questions. What do I need to do? And I just, when I started just following and just aspiring and just doing the movement upwards, things start unfolding, because I realized that when I start questioning a lot of stuff, again, attachments come in. Certain attachments come in, thoughts, because I didn't reach that level and that level. And that's, again, part of lower mind spirituality for myself. That's what I discovered. Because if I ask myself all the time questions and think that's wrong, that's it right, we learn through challenges and we have to go through them. That's how we raise our consciousness. We never know where we are right now, and we just feel it from inside. That's what I think. I think we feel from inside if we are getting to a certain, if our inside gets better, if we go closer to from very chronic negative feelings, maybe, to where we have some kind of equilibrium, or we have negative states which are less in our life. We have certain measurements. We have the inside and we have the outside world, and we can match them, and then we can see. But we have to be. Before, I was not very honest with myself, so I just thought, yeah, I want to reach this and that, but inside was getting empty. No, it's amazing. That's what I want to reach, and I was not truthful to myself.
Do you feel like you're truthful now, or do you feel like there's some...
It's in good direction, I would say.
Yeah? Where do you feel you're not being truthful now?
I would say I'm not saying always. I will not say that I am truthful, because again, I never want to push the part of my ego in any direction.
I see what you mean. You want to keep your humbleness, your humanness.
Because I know that's from a divine source and divine self, and that's, again, the lower part gets activated when we think that I am powerful, or there are powers which are channeling through me. That's a completely different approach.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I see that my life is improving when I see myself like a vessel more than being powerful, and not like the people who are governing the earth, who think they have all control and power. That shows that that's the highest form of animalistic nature. And the more you come away from that, the more powerful we get from inside and outside. But we don't feel this ego that we are powerful. But it shows in the results in life, and also in success in many directions in life, and not only money. And that's also, again, a part which I would like to elaborate on. Like, people who just focus on money and think that money is everything. When they have the money, they never feel fulfilled from inside, and that happens all the time. And people just, even with certain people I talk to, that they say that money doesn't give them happiness. And when we have the aim of following that direction in the 3D world, we are exploiting our happiness hormones. And that's why, again, I prove that if we follow that path, it's disbalancing us, like attachment, right? So we have to have a stage which shows from a physiological and equilibrium point of view between detachment and attachment, right? So there's a stage in between again, right? Between, we're saying like enlightenment, and then you bring it down to earth, yeah? So I think they're not the right vocabulary available to describe these kind of states. We always have the vocabulary for enlighten, and then we have the 3D dimensional vocabulary, but there is also a lot in between.
I think Jim Carrey said something like, I wish everybody can become rich and famous to know that it's not what it's all about. And there is truth to that, because even myself seeking and wanting to get to that place, you know, we want to grow. So everybody wants to get rich because they want to grow. They want to, I mean, if you're limited by your resources, right? So once you get there, then you know, because you can read it in the books, and I've done it before. Yeah, okay, great. However, I want to grow, and I want to, you know, these things. And when you do get there, and it's here it is, it's given to you, you suddenly realize that it actually brings a whole lot of other responsibilities and stress in that moment, because when you have all that money and you have all this choice, like when I was a coach and I could work from anywhere in the world because I had a laptop, I was frozen. I didn't know where to leave. I just stayed in London because I had so much choice. I had analysis paralysis, you know? And the same goes with money. You kind of got it, and you're seeking, like, I want this feeling, but, you know, what do I do? Buy a yacht, you know? And I can see that this is where the world is going, because we're pulled in a direction of, you know, well, I've got it all. It doesn't matter the cost of the resources on the planet. I just want to feel the feeling, because I want to escape my responsibility, my, you know, true meaning of why I'm here. This is going from the old earth, stepping into the new earth, you know? What is our life purpose, what getting here? And it's beautiful to see people like yourself. That is, you know, you found your calling, and you're doing what you're doing, being what you're being, shifting people's perception, especially within the medical field, more important than ever now. And it's beautiful to give you the platform that you can share your perspective that is actually not only working, but you have medical people around you that are actually affirming, wow, this is different, it's new, and I'm seeing new results. So that is awesome. And I'm looking forward to, once the app comes about, maybe we jump you back on. And if people have questions, we can, you know, delve into it a little bit deeper.
Thank you.
Does that sound cool?
Very good.
Did you enjoy yourself?
I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you very much for the nice conversation.
Pleasure, man. What did you think of the juice?
It's really good, really fresh.
5 stars?
6.
All right, I just had to say that for Adam's face. There you go. If only he had that on camera. All right, man. Pleasure. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Really.
Thank you very much.
All right, everybody. That was Faras. Thank you for checking us out at the New Earth Studios. Thank you, team. Thank you, studio. Much love. We vibe when you subscribe.